Welcome to the 2020 version of the annual meeting. This should be fairly brief. The first order of business is to waive the reading and accept the minutes from the 2019 meeting. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Motion.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. We have a quorum. The quorum, for our purposes, is established via your presence, voting members, or present members, absentee ballots, and proxies. So we can declare a quorum and business can be conducted. And on to the business, the first order of business is to elect the slate of governors as presented. And these are both to elect to a term. Peter Storer and Todd Fowler. Can I have a motion to advance those two candidates?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
On that carries. On to motion 2, which is to amend the bylaws, Article 2, membership, Section 2, voting members. The number of golfing members shall be limited to 350 from 385, or to such other numbers may from time to time be fixed by a vote of the voting members at any annual meeting of the voting members called for that purpose. And, once fixed, shall remain at that number until further action by the voting members at a subsequent annual or special meeting of the voting members. The Board of Governors may reduce this maximum number of golf members as they deem necessary, provided that no existing golf memberships may be affected or eliminated by reason of such reduction. Can I have a motion, or a motion to move number 2?
Motion to move.
Second? Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion 2 passes. With that, the business portion of this meeting is closed, and I'll now turn it over to Tom Archibald, who will run the board's annual presentation.
Thanks, Larry. I'm going to try something. I do this every year and it doesn't work. Can you hear me? Yeah. On the back.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this. Walk around a little. Usually I'm going to try not to because I don't want to get too close to anybody. But see how it goes. I'd rather not. And I'm going to face this way. This is something we do after 6 years. I figured this out. I'm going to face the audience, use the same slides, face you while I do. And Gary, if this works, will advance the slides. Thank you. All right. Well, quite a year in a lot of ways. In the end, I mean, we were talking about huge losses in March and April and didn't know where we'd be. We thought we'd lose a lot of cash, and we came out all right. That's the good news. And we got a lot of golf in. That's also the good news. The course was in great shape. Tee times were a big issue. Still are. Still will be going forward. But we're trying to do what we can. So let me start. Slide 1 here again. Let's have a moment of silence for those folks. Every year we lose about that number because it was the same with the page. So a moment of silence for those folks. Thank you. And let me say this. Alan Rogers at the top of the list donated $25,000 from his estate to the employee fund this year. That's Alan for you. And on the employee fund, by the way, I'll use that reason to know soon to contribute to that. I think I saw his last couple of notes last year and then forgot about it. We got into the board meeting where he told us how we did and how we're doing, and I said, oh, I forgot about that. So I encourage you to do what you can this year for those groups. It's almost like they went over and above the call of this meeting. They were worried themselves, more than we were. They want to get contaminated, and they worked long hours. Did a nice job. Done a scholarship group of people we get every year. Jack Goikus leads the charge on this. And I think, I don't know if this is true this year, but we are probably the biggest donor to the County Scholarship Fund, and we get paid back in kind on that. Is that so?
Yeah.
I believe so.
In New Hampshire. All right, Gary. Membership. So 2018 to 20, members go up every year. That's, in the golf members, the cap stays the same. A lot of people worry, a lot of you worry, I know, how can we keep bringing more members in when the tea table's so tight? Well, the new members coming in are not playing golf, except a couple of times a month, just a couple. So that doesn't really hurt what we have going on. But the membership keeps coming. Last week at the board meeting, we had 7 new couples come in to sign up. So that probably won't end. That's why we're doing some of the things we're doing. Notice the resign. Average resignations over the past 7 years, 31. The average number of golfers that leave that category is roughly 30. So we lose 30 golf members. They might become social, they might become century, they might pass away. So we lose about 30 golf members a year. So we're expecting 30 out, 15 in, and we can get down from 385 to 350 in a couple of years, more or less. We'll see how it goes. 2020, year end, if we try to predict the year end 2020, at this point, this is where we stand. Turn around revenue, not as good as the budget, almost $400,000 less than the budget. As it turns out, if you look at cash, we came out okay, and I'll get to that in a minute. But that's a pretty big hit versus budget. Expenses down too. As soon as this hit, I think in the first board meeting, we had already done things before that. We started jumping through hoops to cut costs and cut back on overtime. We managed to keep our employees, all our full-time employees, and that's a big deal because these are great people. Where other clubs cut, we were able to keep them. But we cut back on Pat's seasonal people and our own seasonal people. We cut back in capital. So the expenses are down, primarily related to COVID. Capital budget, actual 325, I'll talk about that in a minute. We cut 240,000, I think, out of the capital budget to save cash. That helped us get through the year. Surplus versus budget now, $450,000 under budget. Not too bad, for sure, compared to what we might have done. Now, this restricted capital fund. We have about 1.1 billion in the restricted capital fund. With another 300, 400, 500. But here's 6. Cash, money market funds. So we have 1.6, 1.5, 1.6 billion in cash. And I'll tell you now, I'll get into some detail, but that we use for a rainy day. This looked like a rainy day back in March. And we were thinking in March and April that we might actually lose $800,000. We are better off today than we were in March and April. I'll get into that a little bit. Jim.
Tom, does the budget include the 200,000 or so we got from the government?
The budget didn't. We didn't know about it when we did the budget. But we got that cash from the government.
Is it in the numbers over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. It's in that forecast, it's the 150 loss to budget, that includes the 200 that we received.
Thank you.
I'll show you a lot of detail on that. We got lucky. And we did a lot of hard work. All right, Gary. KPIs. KPI means key performance indicators. Just some of the things we look at. Revenue. We'll look at this because I agree with it. Revenue in 20 was actually up. I mean, revenue is dues. fees, that kind of thing. So the virus didn't change that very much. There's a piece of it that's dues, fees, we get some from golf, we get some from functions. Last 150, as I said, capital investment 325, a couple hundred lower, 240 lower than we budgeted. We cut that off, cut many of them off immediately. I'll show you some of those. Revenue, this is budget for next year. Now, Lee, I think what we did here, we went through 3 or 4 reviews and then said, Lee, change these things, and we went back and did. We are basically budgeting the same as we did this year. Hard to predict what's going to happen next year. It's impossible to predict what happened this year. But we all, after 3 or 4 reviews, we are suggesting we'll do similar next year as to what we did this year.
So the revenues, the budgeted revenues for next year are slightly less than what we had budgeted this year, but more than we actually did this year. So we're sort of in between. Assuming that some of the weddings will be coming back at some point this year, where they didn't come back so much this year, come back next year, I mean. So that's where that revenue budget, that's how it came about.
Lee starts the budget process, just for your information. I get a lot of questions during the year saying, how do you do these things? So one per year, I'll tell you some of these things. He starts it 2.5 months ago with the staff, with everybody in the staff. They put it together, they come back with their best guess. Lee says, gee, we can't afford that. He never says, oh, why don't you have to do more? But he does it, and we iterate through, and then it goes to the finance committee with Chuck, and they iterate through it, and then it comes to the board for a couple of months, and we just finished that this last meeting, just approved it, with some changes that we subsequently made. So that's the budget process. Gary? Weddings and functions. 2019, we had 19 weddings. I think I've been through 7 wedding cycles on the board, and that's the biggest by far. I think we usually average about 12. This year was 7. We did 12 scheduled. Sometimes 12 scheduled. We got 7 units and cancellations. Some moved to next year, but we took a hit in weddings. According to Lee, we probably average in an average year 150 people per wedding. This year it's more like 75, we had some at 30, we had some at 100. So we did take a hit on that. In fact, functions were down about $400,000 this year. And then next year, we still have 9 booked. That's pretty good for this time of year. All right, Gary. Increases in expenses. You know, I think I started doing this 5 or 6 years ago, just to show people where things were increasing. They didn't increase much this year. We also have an average increase in salaries and pay by a couple of % a year, kind of the way the economy goes. So nothing big there. Gary. Dues impact, and Steve is going to talk more in detail on this. I think you folks are kind of familiar by now with about a 2.9% increase. And we don't make up that number. It covers pretty much what we want to do. And 2.9% comes in just about right. Well, this year we are going up to, for golfing members, 8.3. Steve can explain this better than I can. But our intention is to drop from 385 to 350 golfing members. You all know that by now. And in doing that, we lose initiation, we lose ancillary figures people spend. And the calculation is straight calculation that Laura did. Laura, by the way, Laura Chamberlain is our financial person. If you ever need to know any number in any book, she's provided. She did the calculation. This is going to cost us roughly X dollars by that by the golfing members. This is the increase in cost. So there's no magic there. It's just a calculation. Now this is a pretty good slide. So what did COVID do to us? Did some good things and it did some bad things. First, the bad things were we had to cut seasonal employees, we had to cut costs, we had to cut capital. Here are some of the examples. The EIDL grant, I had to ask what that was, Economic Injury Disaster Loan for $10,000. Great old grant. Laura keeps up on all this, and we got that from the federal government. And the 201,000 that Jim's talking about employee retention credit. For the employees that we were able to retain, or I'll take a shot at this, the government would give us a certain amount of money. So I'll leave it at that unless you want more detail. We didn't qualify for the PPP program, which were 503, 501c7. And that didn't qualify. Some other clubs like Manchester did, because they are not that category. But we didn't, but we did qualify for this. And the result was we got a check. At least this is not even really, we got a check of $200,001 from the government, keeping our people. Good deal. We deferred 6 months of mortgage payments. And that's $111,000. So that's still a liability. We'll come due at the end. The end is years away. Another good deal. We cut immediately. We went through immediately what we could defer capital. Every year, we put together a capital list. There's some must-dos, without question. Some we'd like to do. Some it's about time to do. Some, gee, we can defer that if we have to. And you can imagine these are irrigation. We don't have to do that. We have 8, 9, and 10. Land parks. And our irrigation we've got years of doing irrigation. Bunkers, it's about 100,000 if I remember. The dam next door to Lee's house, 7-Eleven. We have to replace that dam. But we thought if we drew down the water enough and left it low, it didn't give us a risk of bursting. We have to replace it because it's damaged and it will eventually burst. So we put that off. That's $100,000. And then the master plan, the new clubhouse money we might have spent this year. That's another chunk of money. $240,000. Even though we didn't meet the budget, we were low on the budget. We're still in cash. We came out all right. Here's what, $550,000. Out of the 800 we were afraid of losing, we managed to call it back. So we're all right in cash. We actually do have more cash now than we did in March, or at the beginning of the year. That's those were scary times in March and April, especially with our restricted capital fund possibly going to close to zero. COVID dining hours, all the governor's guidelines, I'll say a little more about that. That kind of made it easy on us in golfing guidelines too. We didn't have to make many decisions. We had to make decisions about how we were going to do these things. But in terms of 6 feet spread between tables, or do you pull a pin out or not, or we're going to have rakes or not, there's probably 50 decisions that were taken out of our hands, and that was a good thing. We could defend them. So again, I'll say Lee and staff, they really moved quickly on a lot of these things. 110 seats outdoors, and I think we have about 110 indoors. So we really didn't lose any dining capacity. In fact, we were ahead in food and beverage budget. We ended up on that thing. We were ahead for months versus last year.
We're about break even year to date because of the beginning part, but we were certainly ahead with the June, July, August months.
Yeah. So that's a win. We didn't know what to expect there. Takeout was a success. It still is for that matter. On the inside, go ahead, yeah. We're gonna buy a tent. next year. We're renting this one. On the inside, we found, and I've since read about it myself, some of the universities, a lot of restaurants, big commercial buildings are using these ion generators within their HVAC system. It ionizes the air, and the negative and positive charge picks up the impurities in the air, the smoke or dust, or even virus, and they stick to the filters or even the walls or ceilings, and they are not carried in droplet form. So the more of those you have, we have now in every unit. We have now, we get really the best. Good deal for the inside. I don't read anything that says it's absolutely guaranteed, but apparently a lot of people think it's much better. So we've done that. And improved filters. I think we're also circulating air constantly, so you can get better circulation and not stagnant air. I don't know that many people are doing that, but we are. Grounds. Here is our grounds chair, but I'll do this just so people aren't falling on the down. Pretty self-explanatory. The golfers in the room have seen all of this. Expansion of the rough on 17 on the right-hand side as you're approaching the hole. That saves a lot of golf balls. You won't necessarily get a better shot, but it saves golf balls. New hedges on 13, expanded the 8th tee. That's a nice expansion. Gives you a whole different look at the fairway. Tree trimming, the lower 9, and rebuilding of the 10th hole. Which, if you haven't seen that yet, there's a picture of it coming out. That's nice to go to the forward tee. That is the 17th, looking at the 17th hole on the left. There's Molly, cat's dog on the right. Pat sends out pictures at 6 o'clock in the morning. Molly's always in here. 10th tee. If you haven't seen that, that's a really nice looking forward tee. Ladies tee, senior tee. Here. Golf. Ray is going to do golf. Ray will turn on the golf too. And I say occasionally that there are jobs that are tougher than mine, and Ray's is tougher than anybody's.
Thank you, Tom. Sometimes it can be. I do appreciate all the feedback. I get a lot of emails from a lot of members, positives, negatives. We try to incorporate a lot of these comments. I appreciate you sending me those comments. This was an unprecedented year. Obviously, the pandemic. We started off the year very interesting. You know, the pandemic came, and of course, we closed the course. The governor made us close the course. Golf committee started meeting via Zoom calls, trying to put together how do we reopen the course. At that time, we didn't know the governor was going to put a committee together and do all the things that the governor did. But interestingly enough, COVID for the golf industry, I would have to say, was a boom. If you look at, I was talking to Jim a couple of weeks ago, he's saying that in the industry itself, the manufacturers this year, this was the biggest year, the most equipment that any manufacturer has ever sold. Everybody wanted to play golf. Why? Because it lends itself to social distancing. It's something you actually can do. You know, you couldn't go out to eat, you couldn't go to a movie. You know, you really couldn't do a lot. You go outside and walk. And if you could social distance 6 feet, playing golf was perfect. So there was a lot of rules that came into play. We actually started putting together our own rules, and then the governor came out. And one of the positives that I saw come out of this was the unprecedented, I think, coordination between Jim, the New Hampshire Golf Association, the governor and his committee. There was a lot of real positives that I saw come out of that, and they were very communicative to us, quite a bit, actually. We got daily emails on updates as to where we were. Massachusetts was doing something different than New Hampshire. There was a lot of problems with that. But I think we got to the right spot. This year, the golf course was incredible, right? You know, I'm not going to talk about tee times, by the way. I'm saving that for Steve. Tea times is a huge issue again this year. With COVID, it made it that much more difficult. Some of these numbers prove it. I mean, we're 20% up year over year on rounds. In October alone, we're up 44%. Up 44%. I came here on a Thursday at like 6 o'clock, and the parking lot was full of cars. I couldn't even find a parking space in October because people just were out there playing a lot of rounds this year. We have to do a lot. We have to get very creative. A couple of golf committee members here. We have to get very creative with our tournaments. Shotguns, as you know, were not allowed for a long time, and so we have to modify a bunch of our events. We modified guest privileges. We didn't allow guests on the course for quite a while to try to accommodate our own members. We had to change the gentlemen's and the ladies' summer classic. Interestingly enough, I think the majority of people like the fact that we moved the summer classic to September, at least the men's. They were both very successful, and we may end up holding that. So it's something we learned from COVID. Pat was able to set the course up in such a way for the summer classic that most of the folks loved it. We have to modify men's and ladies league. We have signups every week for that. We have to modify, of course, our tea time intervals. I think everybody loved 12-minute tea time intervals. I know I did. Getting the rounds in at 3.5 hours was unbelievable. Practice facility, the bag room, the locker rooms, we have to modify all those. And again, our golf committee meetings, they were tough. Holding these via Zoom was not easy, and we spent the majority of the year, until August actually, I think it was the first meeting we decided to have here. The handicap committee was very busy this year, as everybody knows. We did a test in the spring utilizing the software that we had with posting of scores. And I don't know, 70 or 80 members got letters for failure to post, which generated about 150 emails to me. Folks weren't happy. And so, but the good news is, and what this bullet is at the end of the season this year, our compliance with the USGA rules was phenomenal. It's the first time in a long time that we've been that compliant with folks posting. So I think that after we got through the fits and starts, everybody understood that we were serious about their handicapping and their posting, and pretty much focused that in line. When we first started tracking it, we had, upwards of 15 people every week that were non-compliant. So Peter Leary, who's our handicap chair, was sending a lot of emails, contacting people, asking them to post. And towards the end of the season, it was like one person every couple of weeks that wasn't posting. So I think the message was sent, and I think everybody's been very good about posting. We implemented split tee times. That was something that we tried this year. It was a suggestion from a member for some of our larger events where we would occupy a chunk of the tee sheet in the morning. And so we tried doing AM and PM tee times for a couple of our events, and it actually worked out pretty well. And we're probably going to incorporate that into our calendar next year on a going forward basis. And we recommitted to the Seacoast Amateur. The Seacoast Amateur is an event that's been around a very long time. Abenaqui have been instrumental. We were part of the founding of the Seacoast Amateur. It involves, 8 or 9 courses in New Hampshire and Maine. And a couple years ago, we got out of it. I say we got out of it. We got out of the rotation for it. But this year, the board made a decision to recommit ourselves to the Seacoast Amateur, and we'll be coming here in 2021. Pro Shop had, as they always do, they had a lot of changes. They are very creative. Jim and his team, they developed several tutorials and videos. I think if anybody has seen any of them, they're usually very funny and very informative. They continue to do that this year with some success. They've organized a trip to Brandon Dunes, which folks that went on that had a great time, beautiful place, and they organized another trip up to Nova Scotia next year, 2021, that's already full. I think Jim's trying to get more rooms to open that up to more people. And Jim had his own personal success. He was selected to the advisory board of the PGA Golf Shop Owners. So this is an advisory board that helps pros like him how to manage their shop. And that's a really good accolade for Jim to have. And just like everything else, like the golf course getting used a lot, pros, lessons were up 22% this year. You know, people were coming over to play the golf course and they couldn't get a tee time, they'd come over and practice. We came over to the practice room, always full of people, always stacked. And people were coming over and can't play, I'm going to take a lesson. And so, Jim, I think you were up over 100% yourself, right? I mean, doubled his lessons for a year, so that's great. It's great to see a lot of good golf in the future. So looking ahead to 2021, I think that when Steve gets done with his presentation, there's a lot of changes that the golf committee is going to need to be involved in. So we're going to spend some time with development of some of those modifications. The golf calendar, we change the golf calendar every year because we always learn from our golf calendar. From the events, we're put them in the calendar, how we hold them, the format of the events. And so that's usually our first order of business. As we work through the winter, we usually work by email and we start putting together our calendar. But again, I talked about the Summer Classic being moved. We're probably going to change a few other events as well. We are going to be holding a qualifying event. As I think most people know, 2022, we're going to be holding the New Hampshire State Amateur. Last time we held it was 25 years ago. So I think we were due to hold it. And as a result, we'll be holding one of the qualifying events next year. So that'll be coming. And we are looking at more software for automating the posting of scores. For a lot of people want to know why we don't post people's events, scores, like after the Summer Classic, after the Eclectic, after other events. Jim's taking a look at some software that will work with all our software so that it makes it easier for us to do those types of things. I think that's it. Right. Okay. Any questions? Dana, is that you, Dana? I can't tell you to ask.
So, I speak for myself only, but we have way too many tournaments. This tournament schedule is insane. It takes up way too many tee times. You can't get on the course as it is, and it seems like every single week we have a tournament.
So I started on the golf committee 5 years ago, I think. We've cut out more tournaments, cut out a ton of tournaments.
Can you name?
Maybe doesn't seem
Can you name even one?
Doesn't. Big Lebowski,
That's
Little
not
Brown what else? Because we go through this, and what happens is tournament participation wanes, and we cut out tournaments. But as much as there's a lot of people you write, because I do get emails, plenty of emails from people that don't like tournaments, but there's so many other people that like tournaments as well, and so
The same people play in all the tournaments. It's the same over and over and over again. And it's not fair to the people who don't play in tournaments. Not only that, you have way too many member guests. I don't understand it. You take up a ridiculous number of days to have member guests. And I don't understand how you can.
Isn't there 4 member guests?
When we are so busy on the team, we have so many members that want to play.
1 month.
You have a ridiculous number of member guests per event.
I think there's 4.
Then you had the member instead of having the Summer Classic, which took us off the course too. And then you had the Summer Classic. Like, what, are you kidding me? What is
Well,
going
one
on?
of those, but the Summer Classic, we had a member in the fall. And so we did the member in place of the Summer Classic.
You had a 3-day member that took up tee time and took away from the people who
But
don't
there were still
play
2 tournaments that were on the calendar. We just moved them around. So we didn't have a tournament.
You did so. You added the 3-day member in the middle of the summer.
It was only 2 days, and it was in the fall, and we didn't.
No, it was.
It's a tournament we usually hold in the fall. It's a 2-day member. But
Friday,
so all we did was switch it.
Saturday?
All we did was
Friday,
switch it.
Saturday tournament.
All we did was switch the fall member, moved it to the summer classic date, and then got rid of the fall. So we just swapped them.
All right.
So it may seem like we have a lot of tournaments.
It doesn't seem like we have a lot of tournaments. We have way too many tournaments. The same people in the club, the same 50 people play in the tournaments.
Yep.
You have 385 memberships, not members, memberships.
Yeah. I don't know how to, I don't know what you want. You want to hear me say we're going to cut tournaments?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm going to do that. Be hard to cut, and I don't know which tournament I would cut. I mean, I talked to the golf committee about which tournaments we think we want to cut. But, I mean, I would argue that a lot of people that are playing on the golf course are playing in tournaments. And yes, there's a large percentage of people that never play in any tournament. I get that too, and that's okay. But I don't think the course is occupied with tournaments all the time.
It sure is. You have the senior men's club championship. You've got the senior club's gross club championship. You've got the net the gross. You've got
Those are all the trophy events. Are you talking about cutting trophy events?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
My gosh. Cut them all.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, that makes my job easy.
It's the same people that play. Why don't you combine them? Why don't you combine the net and gross? Why do you have to have both? You can have the
Totally
same
different format. So that's, gross players don't want to play net events, and net players aren't good enough to play gross events. So I'm trying to accommodate both types of golf players.
There are way too many.
Point taken, I got it.
There are way too many member nets.
All right. Any other questions? Because I don't know how to answer that one other than cutting tournaments. Anybody else? Yes.
I don't know if you or Steve, was talking about somewhere along the line, I heard that there was a possibility of getting a ranger next year.
Yes, that's part of it. That's one of it. It's not necessarily going to be a range. Steve will talk about that. Yes.
Okay, I'll refer that. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes.
Great. Are we committed long-term to continuing to use this T-Time software where we have this 8 o'clock, hit the computer as fast as you can go?
We're not committed to it, no. If we can come up with a better idea, we come up with a better idea.
I think if we could find something that was perhaps managed by the club, and something called the lottery, or whether it's
So
called usage.
Steve will talk a little bit about one of the things that we're looking at doing is having a little more pro shop intervention, so setting up the tee times to try to facilitate some of the things that we run into. Whether that's successful or not, time will tell. But we've looked at other software. I mean, we've looked at various other clubs that do use a lottery system and those types of things, but I don't think folks would be happy with it. Might make some folks happy, it won't make other folks happy. So, I think when Steve gets done, you'll see that what we're trying to do is we're trying to address multiple aspects of the golf course and making tee times. No one individual idea is going to solve it, but maybe together it makes it a little bit more palatable. We have a golf course where you've got heavy, what people, you're trying to stick, 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag, and it's every weekend, and it's just, I don't see anything solving that until you either make more tee times or you have less people. So I don't know how to solve that. So, but we can try to make it a little bit more easier to use or less frustrating to use, I should say. Any other questions? Thank you.
Got Mr. Joe to the club. I have one more point, and then I'm going to introduce your next president to talk about tee times. The point, logo. Probably now, it was in June when we got our first letter on the logo. And we got 3. Fairly close order, one right after And they were all very well written, very well intentioned. The people really that wrote them all were against the logo, all wanted us to consider changing the logo. And we said we would take a good look at them. We did some research, we being the board, and a couple of members helped out. And it turns out, as you probably have figured, you can find information on any site you want on this, and very good information. There are organizations dedicated to keeping logos and promoting logos. There are indigenous people dedicated to keeping them or to getting rid of them. We couldn't find enough information to make a decision for us. So you all know we did a survey, and when we did a survey, we were saying to ourselves, gee, what if it doesn't come out the way we want? Well, if it doesn't, it doesn't. So here are the numbers, how it came out. I think there were 4 or 5 questions. And the two that really put us over the top, 546 members responded to the survey. And I don't know if any survey, we don't do that many surveys, we can do more lately. But I don't know if anybody's ever had that kind of result. Survey responses are generally low. It's a pretty high number. 75% approved or highly approved of the logo. We did a lot of talking to people inside also. We didn't have any choice because people came talking to us about this on both sides. And 80% of the responses were to keep the logo. So that made our job a little easier. We were hard pressed to say we're going to get rid of the logo. And we found arguments on both sides. And with this kind of data and the membership speaking so loudly. And it wasn't just the numbers. It was, in my word, I read every single one of those. There were some funny ones, some most not so funny, most very serious. The passion was definitely on the side of keeping the logo. The comments approached angry about getting rid of the logo. The people who wanted to get rid of it were more mild and said maybe it's time to do that. And there were strengths and weaknesses on both sides. So at our last board meeting, we voted to take no action on the logo. We'll leave it where it is. Any questions on that? All right. My next job is to introduce your next president. He's going to close the meeting. So I'm going to say about him that he will hit the ground running. Great guy. Knows the club, knows the people. We went around when Steve first joined the board and said, why don't, just so we get to know each other, why don't we introduce each other, how long have we been a member? And Steve, you always really laughed and said, well, I've been a member since the day I was born. That's true. He was born into the club. Knows a lot, has a lot of good ideas. He will change things, and all for the better. He's been a great partner to me as vice president. In fact, probably get sick of each other, but it's fun to work with. So Steve will talk about T-TAC and he will close the meeting.
Tom, thanks for your service. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for those kind words.
What's your last name?
I'm going to let you look it up. Steve Bottomley, for those of you that don't know. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about what you've already received, which was the tea time proposals. What I'd like to do is just summarize them quickly. And if you can, hold your questions till the end, but if you do need to ask a question, please do, if you think it's necessary to ask right away. Before I get into that, I just want to thank the members of the Tea Time Committee, as well as the members of the membership, finance, and golf committees. Those 4 committees took several looks at this proposal, and the board took several looks at this proposal. And what we tried to do was come up with an adjustment that's going to hopefully make getting a tea time at Abenaqui and playing around at Abenaqui a little bit better than it has been. One of the anomalies that we faced, and Ray talked about and Tom talked about it, is this COVID situation. We had no idea what it was going to be like. And what I've said is that COVID did for golf rounds in 1 year what it took Tiger Woods 4 or 5 years. So it was a big adjustment. We don't know how much of this is going to be a hangover for next year. Depends on the vaccine, depends on a number of situations. And we don't know what the new norm is going to be after COVID is done, but it's certainly not going to be what it was before. So what we tried to do is hit a number of areas, make a number of adjustments, and hopefully that will make life easier at Abenaqui. And what I will tell you now is that, again, this is an adjustment. We will keep our eye on it, and if it doesn't work, we will continue to adjust until we get things to where it's an enjoyable situation for Abenaqui. Because I know this year was very tough, and for those of you that there were some complaints and they were justified. And for everybody, thank you for your understanding of the situation. Let me get into what we're going to do. First of all, reducing the number of certificate holding golf memberships by 385 to 350 golf memberships. That's going to result in a little change in the dues. As was brought up earlier, we go up 2.9% each year. This is going to add an additional 5.4%. Our original forecast was for a 10% increase. And I look over to Laura, who went and actually looked at the individual changes over the last few years to see what people were actually spending, and actually cut about 1.6% out of our projections. So nobody likes an increase, but it's not as bad as it could have been. It's just left for our own committee's designs. That is going to result in for the years of 2021 and 2022. It's going to be an 8.3% increase in dues. We're going to make an additional $75 capital contribution for senior memberships. Intermediate memberships will be, as they always have been, half of that increase. And we're going to increase the initiation from $15,000 to $20,000. And the reason for all this is to make up for the dues income, the ancillary spending income, and the capital contributions that will be missing during the transition from 385 to 350. Finally, that transition is going to be one new member will be allowed into the club for every 2 members that resign. That way we can still get at least some initiation income from our capital. The second thing that we are going to do is adjust intermediate member tee time. In the documents that you got, it stated that intermediate members would not tee off until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. My mistake was not getting any intermediate members onto the tee time committee. And a couple of them wrote some very well thought out and astute letters to us, to the board. We looked at their statements, we talked it over with the golf committee, we talked it over at the board level, and we've adjusted the intermediate tee times on weekends and holidays to begin at 11 a.m. instead of 1 p.m. Intermediate members are a very important part of the future of Abenaqui, and we have an extremely high retention rate. So the intermediate members will be teeing off at 11 a.m. on weekends and holidays during the season. The main season is May 1st to September 30th. In the shoulder seasons, before May 1st and after September 30th, they'll be allowed to tee off at 10 a.m. It's just not that busy, and we'll allow them to go off a little early. Any intermediate members from this year that remain intermediate members that want to continue to get the unrestricted tee time privileges may, regardless of the cap, as long as they pay senior dues. Any new intermediate members that come in that want to play unrestricted, that want to have the unrestricted tee time privilege, will be able to do that. However, they're going to have to respect the cap, and they'll be going to the back of the waiting list. Restricted members, restricted secondary members, will be teeing off at 11 a.m. That's an hour difference. We've had a pretty good time this year with the 10-minute tee time, which has been mandated by the government. Round time has been anywhere from, 3 hours and 45 minutes for the earlier folks to maybe 4 hours and 15 minutes. We've basically averaged 4-hour rounds. In order to keep that 10-minute tee time, we would have had to push our restricted members and our intermediate members back to 12 o'clock. That wasn't going to work. So we're going back to 8-minute tee times, and we're going to do our best to make that work. And it's not just moving memberships around, but there's also some other things I'm going to get into that will hopefully help that situation. The restricted secondary members will also be able to tee off at 10 o'clock in the shoulder seasons before May 1st and after September 30th. Unrestricted tee times that are available at 4 p.m. the day before, in other words, Friday at 4 p.m. for Saturday, Saturday at 4 p.m. for Sunday, will be available to restricted tee time members if they so wish. It's not a big carrot, but it's something. What we don't want to do is have those valuable tee times having spaces go up. We don't want twosomes going out in the first part of the morning. And it's a great opportunity for some of our members who can't play early in the morning to have that chance. Introductory junior and junior memberships. Introductory junior memberships are for kids the ages of 12 to 17. Junior memberships are for young adults the ages of 18, I believe that's to 25. The problem we had here in the afternoons this year was we had a ton of junior members come back and join the club. With no idea what COVID was going to do, we allowed it to happen. They played a lot of rounds in the afternoons, and a lot of members who are paying full price weren't able to play. So there's three things that we've done. For both membership categories, we've doubled the dues. Junior membership, introductory junior memberships, the youngsters from 12 to 17 will be capped at 10 memberships. Junior memberships, which is 18 to 25, will be capped at 20 memberships. The junior memberships, the older juniors, will be able to play. They won't be able to play before 2 p.m. Friday through Sunday. And the little guys and gals won't be able to play until 3 p.m. Friday through Sunday. And we hope that that will open up some space in the afternoons. Finally, holes. The holes are those things in the tee times where you have John Smith hold. And initially, they lasted 72 hours. That's 3 days. So you could make a tee time on Monday, and then you wouldn't have to fill in the names until Thursday, and that tee time was held hostage. That wasn't fair. We have reduced the hold times to 24 hours. I think everybody that plays out here, usually you know who you're playing with. And it just means you're going to have to get your group together a little earlier in the week and a little quicker. Is there a way still to game the system? I will tell you that there is. And we have some other possibilities, some other, shall we say, adjustments that will hopefully help with that situation. Let's see, professional shop staff to be more involved with tee times. I think Tom mentioned that, Ray mentioned that. The pro shop staff knows when everybody plays. They know who are in the groups. They know how the system works. They know when somebody's putting in Fred Smith's name. Fred hasn't played before 4 o'clock in the afternoon since he joined here. So these guys will be able, guys and hopefully gals, be able to take a look and see who's gaming the system. They'll be able to assist people who can't get tee times, who can't understand the tee time system. And they will be able to, for example, come in on Tuesday morning. They'll know who the groups are, and they'll be able to call these fellas and say, do you have 4 tee times in a row? Do you want these tee times, or if there's somebody in the middle of them? They will facilitate in sorting out the situation on weekend mornings to help the members. Initially, we have said we have kept the pro shop out of it. That doesn't work. At Abenaqui, the pro shop is always involved. We haven't set the exact parameters of what's going to define how much the pro shop's going to help. But I guarantee you they will be in there to help, and they will facilitate, and we will adjust that as is necessary to make that whole process work. Tee time system education. That's going to be just a page on the website. There's a lot of people, including the one standing before you this evening, that has a little trouble with tee times. And this is going to be something where you'll be able to understand how you go on the tee times, how you make them, how long the holes last, proper etiquette. If some of the holes disappear and you have a twosome that has 2 open times, rather than just plunking your name in, it's going to tell you you really should call the person first. It's not a law, but it's certainly common etiquette, and I'll get to that a little later too. The professional shop staff will effectively ranger the golf course. Nancy, hopefully this will shed a little light on where you were coming from. The course has been extremely busy. And we've had rangers at certain times on the weekends, but we haven't had them at all the busy times. We're going to identify the busy times of the golf course. We're going to have rangers out there, and they're going to be trained, and they're going to know how to ask you to speed up play nicely. And they're also going to keep track of those that are repeat offenders, because we're going to have a discipline system, which will probably just start off with a warning, and then it may result in something else. The golf committee and the board will work on those parameters. But we're going to have to enforce reasonable round times. And the only way to do that is to have people out there to help folks along. So hopefully that's something that's going to help speed up play. Slow play and etiquette penalties will be created and assessed. It's basically what I just talked about. Slow play, we all know what that is. There are certain groups, sometimes individuals, that just can't keep up. Those names we kept track of, and if we have to, there will be penalties. One thing that usually happens when you say that if you're going to do something and you're going to back it up, and you say, if you don't speed up the round, then you may not be able to make a tee time before 11 o'clock for a week. People adjust, and sometimes it takes care of itself. You don't have to assess any penalties. It might be wishful thinking, but I hope that's what happens. Qualifying for tournaments. Qualifying for tournaments, sorry Dan, but we do have club championships here. We have gross and net men's and women's club championships. And the biggest problem with them is not the matches themselves. Normally the matches have to be played over a certain period of time, and they're not played all at once. So that's not the problem. The problem is the qualifying. And when we send people out to qualify at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm out there, and I've been getting putts given to me this long all year, and then all of a sudden I gotta make them. And then it takes a little time. And normally if you're 6 strokes on the hole, you just pick the ball up and you put it in your pocket on a par 3, you can't do that qualifying. So it naturally slows down the round. So what we're gonna do is restrict qualifying for tournaments, for the club championships, gross and net, and we're gonna see about the member. It depends on how many people are in it. But those are gonna be restricted to 12:30 in the afternoon, and it should give everybody, or hopefully most people who are not going to play in the tournament, the time to get out of the golf course in front of it and turn a 5-hour round into maybe 4 hours and 15 minutes or 4 hours. Finally, golf etiquette clinics. What is golf etiquette? Golf etiquette is what I just mentioned. You're going to join a group that has a couple of open times you don't know that you call them first. Golf etiquette is ready golf. If you're ready to hit the ball, you're not in anybody's way, hit the ball. If somebody's putting on the green, take a look at your putt, line it up, be ready to play when your turn comes. If you're on the 5th hole, my favorite example, it's the one hole that happens to me all the time when I'm following a group. Somebody always puts their bag on the right side of the green. And they finish the hole, and they gotta walk way over here, pick up their bag, and they gotta walk way over there. And these seem like small little adjustments, but you would be amazed what 5 or 10, sometimes 15 minutes can do around. So we're not sure if it's going to be actual clinics with the staff of the pro shop, or if we're going to do a video online. But all new members are going to be required to review the etiquette, and those of us who think we know everything might not be a bad thing for us to take a look at it too. It's amazing what we can learn. So I will say again that this is an adjustment, and we've tried to hit all areas and not concentrate, on one. And if we're successful, nobody's going to be happy. And preliminary indications are that we were successful. So that's it here. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer. Lance.
Just a couple of points. In terms of the Rangers, I have, as you all know, I have the opportunity to play 5 times a week. I live here. And I play early mornings, and I play late in the afternoon. And I know this year is a unique year. But I've been here 5.5 decades, and and I have never seen it so busy when I play it 2 o'clock or in the morning. The cheat sheet is gone from, it's still, in November, we're still getting full cheat sheets. You have a ranger. You need to have, you said a busy time. There's always busy times, but you've got to make it so that it beats the dilemma of such a big backup, such as the last part of the year, maybe past half of the year, Steve has been coming up to Ranger on the weekend. But he played early, so he usually hits us, he starts on 18, he comes back, and he starts, we're on 17 when he's giving us away. The damage is already done. You need to get the Ranger out there at 8 o'clock. I feel so bad when I'm coming down 13 and I see 2 groups, 2+ groups on the 4th hole waiting. And it's not, it's halfway through the morning. So the thing with a Ranger, you've got to think it out, put him out there in the afternoon. I'm out there in the afternoon and you have a full tee sheet. I've seen places where you've got to force them so slow that they've got 2 holes open. Everybody in the afternoon, you don't have as many, you have more 2s and 3s. And if I'm not complaining as a single if I'm out there by myself, because, if it's blocked. But if that portrait is holding up, and you've got 2 holes open, it just trickles back. Unbelievable. So I guess my point is you need an assertive Ranger. You need to be like a good parent. If no means no. So don't, every Ranger we've had here has been a nice guy. He's done nothing, other than Norm, God rest his soul. Okay? And he did it in a wonderful way. But and I'm not saying be mean and honoring, but I like the idea of the penalties, but you have to do that. And in terms of a Ranger, have somebody come out periodically, even from the pro shop if they have to, if it's not a Ranger. But it's just been one example, I played out there by myself, and I ended up waiting, and an older couple in front of me said, why don't you join us? I did. Lovely people, the lady, after the 8 holes, said, I can't take this anymore. It was so slow, and it was 2 holes open, and they said, how inconsiderate of the rest of the field. And that's all I'm saying, is that if people are aware, and that leads me to the etiquette part. You said the new members should be, I'm sorry, unless you went to first tee, unless you grew up with the tutelage of a father who, before I stepped foot on the golf course, taught me how to repair a ball mark, all the etiquette, because I was confident of it to get to the golf course. But you need to know the etiquette. And it's just basically consideration of people, and unfortunately we're in a world today where people don't care about anybody except themselves. It's a general blanket statement, but I really think, and I don't think it could be, I don't know technology, but quite frankly, that etiquette video, everybody has to watch it before they get to make a tee time. The computer won't let them make a tee time. And that's the way to go.
I will say this. I don't disagree with one thing I said. And it's going to be something that we have to implement. And you're right, we need a Ranger out there in the afternoon. We're going to have a Ranger in the afternoon. As a matter of fact, we were looking at budgets the other day, and the budget for the pro shop has gone up significantly because Lee and Jim are aware of this proposal, and they've made adjustments in the budget to be able to hire the people that we need. Now, it remains to see if we can do it right, and give me some leeway there. We're going to give it our best shot.
Absolutely.
And with regards to the etiquette thing, you're 100% right. I was being gentle. Everybody should.
Everybody should, because there are, everybody, golf with, I started playing golf when it was like, you're a girl, and you play what sport? And this is how much golf has changed over the years, and it's fabulous. But you also have people who are out there playing golf, and they just don't know the character of the game and the etiquette and everything, and that's part of the,
Right.
ambience of the whole thing. And it just so frustrates me when I see people just, I don't know, it's kind of a pet peeve, if you might say. And one last thing, and I'll walk away. Okay? My third thing that I wanted to bring up was, again, whether it be a video or whatever, in all the years I've played here, I have never seen more divots and ball marks not replaced. I'll give you an example. First week in October, I'm out there by myself. I come to 15. In a 10-foot radius, I fixed 12 Walmarts that were new. They weren't the, old ones like that. It's just appalling. Pat and his crew worked tirelessly for this place, and nobody worked hard, and it's just such a shame that people, again, maybe because they don't know, but newsflash to everybody, if you're a 40 handicap or a 2 handicap, your golf ball makes a mark. And when you get to the green, if you can't find yours, pick somebody else. The other thing, and I've been fighting this all my life, divots, people. When we went to this, you remember back in the day, we didn't have the stuff to put the divot mix, okay? So you put your, again, how I learned how to fix a divot, my father told me it was a puzzle piece. You put it back exactly the way you found it, and it heals within 2 days. People are really good about the divot mix on numerous occasions, but a divot mix will take 2 weeks. The other one, the 4th hole in particular, and the 16th tee, it doesn't matter to us because we're the forward part of it. Technically, I take care of fixing it, okay, because that's my passion. The divots in the morning that are up in pelts, that are literally all the guys had to do was put them back. Some of them were good divot mix, they're trying to be good, but there just has to be a re-education of fixing them, how to fix them, how to fix the ball marks properly. A video, I don't care what it is. I'm done, those are my pet peeves.
By the way, anybody that was here tonight does not have to watch the video. You're absolutely right, and I remember that, there was a time, and I think it was when Jimmy was here, when Ben was here, that anybody that had a set of clubs here in a pull cart, when their clubs were taken out, there was some divot mix put on the side of the pull cart. And for some reason that stopped because the members didn't like it at the time. I see absolutely no reason why we shouldn't put that in. And I think another thing that's going to happen is if you're going out on the first tee to start, or whoever it may be, pro, assistant pro, or just a starter we hire, we'll say, hey, Nance, Dana, have a great day out there. And remember, repair your divots. Replace your divots and repair your ball marks. We have to change the culture. And the only way to do that is repetitive. So that's where we're going, and hopefully we'll improve to the point where if I can satisfy you, I can satisfy you. Dana?
I have a few things about the tea times. First of all, I know we start at 7, and Jocelyn Caulfield was the one who made us start at 7. I think we should start at 6:30. Now, I don't know if there's some sort of law that Rye Beach has, but I think we should research it. These are new times, new days. We should start at 6:30. Every golf.
Let me just let Ray address that.
One of the first things we looked at was starting at 6:30. And the way that Pat has to mow the greens.
No, stop right there.
Okay.
Every golf course in the nation starts earlier than we do.
So can I finish my sentence first?
Okay.
So the way that Pat has to mow his greens, he can't get in near any of the houses that are all over here. He can't get the job done if we start at 6:30.
Yes, he can. This is 2020. It's not 1990.
We went as far as to look at electric
agreement with Jocelyn
mowers that
Caulfield.
are quieter. So-
Dana, we looked at electric mowers. We looked at electric fairway mowers. We actually did a sound test on the porch of the neighbor across the street. The sound that the mowers made was actually less than the cars that drove by, but he said that the mowers woke up his wife. She was used to the cars. The problem is the noise ordinance in Rye. I hear you, and we talked to Pat about it. Pat wrote about a 5-page letter to me outlining all the reasons we can't do it. I wanted to start at 6 to eliminate the problem. Dana, we can't do it. And I would encourage you, you know what we'll do?
We have lawyers. I would like them to research the ordinance in the town and see if that is actually true.
I think we can look into that.
Dawn Kennedy.
Don's all over.
All right, so let's say we're starting at 7. All right. Why is it that your proposal is that with every 2 members that drop out, 1 comes in? Why isn't it every effort that we don't let any members in until we get to 350? we're going up in our dues, and I think that our members deserve something for their money. And another thing we should be doing until we get to 350 and we can't get that extra money in is we shouldn't do any major projects. So until we get to the 350 number and we don't let any new members in, we shouldn't do any big project. That,
The reason that we've only raised the dues to what we have is because we're allowing one member in for every two that go out. If you want to replace the ancillary income that we're going to be missing out on, you're going to have to raise the dues even more. You're going to have to raise the initiations more, and we don't want to do that. Yeah.
In a way, the cap was much lower several years ago, and there's this encroachment. And now, the long-term members are sort of being penalized for this, in a way, reckless behavior, this greed. We had a new bill, we had, other things that we're paying for. And while I don't agree that we don't do any of it, I think just making the golf memberships, whether it's one person or two persons, etc., that level of increase paid for some of the sins that the club has incurred previously. I find, that's what I find wrong with the 8 point, whatever, 9%.
So, in other words, I think it was, I'm trying to think of who the president was, it was a long time ago when they went up to 385, and the reason they did that were times were a little tougher, they needed to get more members, and they needed to raise more money. Times have changed now. We have more members coming in, they're more active, they're more affluent. Golf's popularity, I think that there's a silver lining to COVID. It's going to be a boon to the golf business, at least in the short term. But this is to make up to be able to provide the product that we've been providing. We need to raise the dues to cover the income that we're going to be losing. So that's the reason that the dues are going up. Dues pay for operations, and then capital investments pay for capital improvements.
Well, I sort of agree with Dana that until we get to this new level, that we should not do, and certainly because we don't know what's going to happen next year, any sort of master plan, whatever, you cannot keep penalizing the members that have been here for years.
I don't disagree, and we'll take a hard look at that out of respect for the members, especially as we monitor how this is working with members leaving and members coming in. There's certain things that we have to do to keep up with the condition of the golf course, but we will certainly look at that, and we won't do anything rash. I guarantee you there won't be a vote on whether or not to renovate the pro shop next year. Monica?
Would you consider lessening the amount of play that social members can, instead of 2 a month, 1 a month? Would that make any kind of an impact? How many social members rounds of golf can be played at the busy times?
The only place that social members would probably impact, and this is just a guess, I don't have the exact numbers, would be in the afternoons. And from what we've been able to tell, they haven't been a significant impact. But what I will tell you is a gentleman who has been a member here for a number of years, and I'm not sure whether he wants me to mention his name or not, so I'm not going to without his permission. But he's a data guy, and he is going to help us take a look at the rounds. Who's playing the rounds? How many rounds are they playing? When are they playing the rounds? And it'll give us a better handle on who's doing what, when, and are we charging the right balance of fees? So that's something we're going to look at, and that's part of the continuing adjustment and the continuing monitoring of the situation. Any other questions?
one thing you didn't cover in the tea times is guest policy.
Pardon?
Guest policy. You didn't mention guest.
I didn't, and I didn't. The guest policy is going to be guests. We're going to relook at that, but right now guests can go off at 11 o'clock.
But that doesn't seem fair when restricted members and intermediate members are.
You're right,
going
and
at the
we're
same
going to
time.
take a look at that, and that may
you should
be
be
pushed
able
back to
to
noon.
go off before
Well, it's also a privilege for the unrestricted members. And I promise you, the board will look at that as well as the golf committee, and we may adjust and send guests back to noon on weekends. It's something we should look at, and we will get. Thank you. You bet. Anybody else? Wes?
Thoughts? Wishing you good luck.
Thank you very much. What a lovely segue that is to the next section. If there aren't any other questions, I'm just going to move right on to the 2020 Board of Governors. We've got two new fellows joining us. Peter Storr, who is going to be on the Finance Committee, will be the chairman. Todd Fawaz, who's going to be joining us, he's going to be the chair of the Membership Committee. And that means that we're missing two. And Chuck Withy has been on the board for 5 years. He's been the chairman of the Finance Committee for 2 years. And as we know, Abenaqui is in pretty good financial shape. So the only thing that is really going to change majorly is I've asked Lee to take a look at the order of Pepperidge Farm cheese goldfish. There is no board member that has ever eaten more of those than Chuck. So we're going to save some money there. But Chuck has been a great boon to the board, and he's done a wonderful job in the Finance Committee. And Chuck, I just want to thank you for it. I guess it's pretty obvious that Tom let the cat out of the bag. I'm in the unenviable position of having to fit into the size 44 shoes that Tom Archibald is going to be leaving in the president's position at the club. I have been here for a long time, and I actually am probably the last president to be able to stand before you and tell you that, with the exception of the first two guys, the second of which his last term ended in 1937, I've known every president in the history of this club. Some better, some not so good, but I've known them all. And normally what happens is the outgoing president gives the incoming president some advice. Well, I've known all the presidents. I think I know more than Tom, so I'm going to give him some outgoing advice. There's 4 things that Tom needs to know. Tom, first of all, you can tell Barbara to take your picture off the refrigerator. She's not going to have to look at it. You're going to be home much more often. She won't have to compare it.
You won't like that.
Second of all, you can relist your cell phone and private phone, because you don't have to worry about the phone calls. Your security detail, if they could report to my house at 9 a.m. tomorrow, so we can talk about the 2021 season. And the fourth one, I think, is skipped my mind. I'm sure it'll come back to me. At any rate, Tom's been on the board for a little over 6 years. He's been the treasurer, he's been the chair of the Finance Committee, and as we all know, he's been the president. And he's been the president for 2 years. This last one has been a really difficult year. And he's not only a really smart guy, but as you've seen in the meetings that he's done for us, he's got wonderful communication skills, and when there's an issue, he always finds a way to handle it. Tom is respected and liked by the board members that have served with me, by our general manager, by all our department heads, and by all their staff. And I dare say I'm not stepping out of bounds, pun intended, when I say that I think most of the membership, if not all, feels the same way about Tom. That's a unique skill. I mentioned earlier that I'd known pretty much every president in the history of this club. We've had some good ones. There's a couple here. Mr. Kovalars is here. My little brother was sitting over there. John, now he's standing over in the corner. He's here. We've had some great presidents, but the reason I said that was because I think it qualifies me to make the next statement. And that is that as we look back on the history of Abenaqui, Tom Archibald is going to go down as, if not the best president we've ever had, certainly one of the best. Tom, thank you. Are there any other questions?
You should ask Todd
Todd and Peter?
Peter.
Everybody sit down but Todd and Peter. The new board members, there they are. Hopefully next year you'll see them without their masks on. If there are no other questions, Mr. Kennedy?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Hope you all have a great, safe winter. We'll see you next year without masks. Thank you.